All right, so we're officially recording now. So everything we say, it's anticipation that we get to share this with the classroom. Why don't we start out with just some of the basics, such as when you signed up, what unit were you assigned, and where you were stationed. So I know you volunteered. When did you volunteer?
Um, December 1969.
1969.
Yeah, December 1969.
Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and pull one of the questions from a student. They asked why you wanted to volunteer. Why did you volunteer?
Um, Volunteering was easy for me because as a kid, um, I had always participated in games and playtime and such as that, and was always interested in the Army through that. Being a kid, just playing Army. Several friends that were very much into that kind of playtime stuff, and we just all the time. So I've always wanted to be a GI, a soldier.
Right.
Just basic Army, the metal helmet, the backpack, and all that stuff they carry as a kid. That's pretty much it. I was always one of those kids that wanted to ride horses and shoot guns.
Regular cowboy.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the training then. So talk a little bit about your basic training experience.
Yeah, well, basic training, I think it was 2 months. It may have been 3 months long. So I enlisted in December, went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's where the basic training that they assigned me to go through was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fort Bragg. It was very cold. That was December. In January, and very cold up there. A lot of snow, a lot of rain, sleet. And of course, as soon as you get in the Army, you understand and learn quickly that it does not rain in the Army. It rains on the Army and snows on the Army, but not in the Army. So that means that you do, regardless of what's happening outside. But I eat it up. I loved it.
I loved it. So the students know that you're a Green Beret, and they jumped real quick on some questions. And one question a student asked was, what was the training and preparation like to become a Green Beret?
Okay, when I was sitting down at the recruiting station here in East Lake in Birmingham, we had a lot of sit time waiting on the transportation to take me to the induction center. So I asked this guy exactly that. I noticed he wore the patch on his shoulder. That meant that he had went through the training himself, which was fortunate for me because he put me on the pathway that pretty much followed my interest. And he, and pretty much from what he told me was what I followed during this training process. I mean, what was your question again? I'm going to stay on it.
Yeah, what was the training like becoming a Green Beret?
Okay, you start off, you got to get through all the required stuff the Army wants you to go through to become an infantry foot soldier. Mm-hmm. That included the months in basic training and several months in advanced infantry training. Plus, the requirement of the special forces was that you be airborne trained also. So that training right there, those 3 segments carried me from December to June for those 3 segments of training. including graduating from the jump school at Fort Benning, Georgia. You know where that's at, don't you?
Oh yeah, I went to school near there.
Okay. So I went from Fort Bragg to Fort Jackson, South Carolina to Fort Benning, Georgia. All right, that gets you qualified to enter the Special Forces training, which sends you back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And that started another 6 months of Special Forces training, which was broken down into 3 segments itself. Starting in midsummer there, I went through the basic Special Forces course to make sure that you're going to be able to finish. That was the physical stuff, some of the mental pressure stuff, the physical exams that you had to go through, which at that time, see, you go enter that program, they examine your whole body to make sure you don't have any identifying marks on you. Tattoos, vicious looking scars, or cuts, or missing teeth, or missing ears, or bald spots on the backside of your head, things like that. They don't want identifying stuff on you. You get through that, then you start all that pressure training, the physical training, the living off the land training, a lot of that stuff they advertise that Special Forces is expert at. But that's to weed out anybody that does not want to continue on, because the training gets more expensive after that. And I do recall that there was 2 or 3 of my companions that went in with me in basic, that they went all the way through all that other training, but they got to that point there and they just packed it up and left. They didn't want no more.
Oh wow.
And they had been through the hardest part, and I tried to get them to change their mind, but they didn't. They'd had enough. But anyway, beyond that, see, was the good stuff. The second tier of that Special Forces training was where you choose the skill set you want to be trained on that's required for the team functions, operations, missions. A team is made up of 10 to 12 men. They're divided up into skill sets. And to be a qualified team, you have to have all of the skill sets before you can carry out a mission. And the training that I chose as my skill set was, at the time, it was called 12B. They called it 12 Bravo, which in layman's terms, it stands for Combat Engineer with the slant towards Special Forces, which is skills in construction, improvised fortifications, material handling. It's an odd thing, but you have to be able to build lifts and bridges and military type functioning buildings, but you don't have any machinery to do it with. It has to be hands-on capable. Blocks, pulleys, levers, stuff like that, which tremendous amount of training. I loved every minute of it, because you had to build, for example, we had to build a bridge that would hold a tank made out of materials you'd find in the vicinity of where you're operating. Trees, railroad, what do you call them things? Railroad tracks.
Yep.
Just whatever you could gather up. You had to build a bridge that would hold a tank. We had to build a lift, like a crane made out of poles that might have been 100 feet long, and would require dozens of men to fabricate the pulleys, the blocks, the anchors, and the platforms to handle stuff like the thing we had to lift up was a huge concrete block that was maybe, I don't know, it might have been 10 feet square, but it was just a concrete block. And we had to build a lift that would, manpower could lift that block up to where a truck could back underneath it. Very interesting to me. Okay, and then after that, that's the second tier of the training. Oh yeah, also included in the that same second tier was the explosives and demolitions, which the 12 Bravo was supposed to be an expert at, which was the biggest part of that training: dynamite, plastic explosives, how to blow up bridges, but you blow them up where you can build them back in case you have to build them back. Ambushes, demolition ambushes, how to fire and improvise munitions on the site to be fired by hand if you don't have the cannons to fire them in, if you don't have the rocket launchers to launch them in. You can fire them out of the cardboard tubes as they're shipped in. So that skill, again, very interesting. I still recall through some of the slides that I have the sessions where I was training the mercenaries that we were training how to fire that stuff out of the cardboard shipping containers.
That's interesting.
Very. It was very. And I never did get to see them in actual combat doing it, but there again, all right, that was the second tier. Explosives, constructions, we had to build barracks, we had to know how to use all of the, we went to Fort Belvoir, Virginia for a short time to be exposed to the U.S. Army construction school that they have up there for engineers. We were there for a month, and all of this stuff that was painted green that you see on the back of these trains and trucks, all that equipment that they use for water filtration, all the equipment they use for anything that the military has, we got to see it. All right, that ended that. Then the third element of the training was where you're put together with a team, a special forces team for a training mission. All right, now the whole time that I was doing the engineer training, there were other recruits that were training in the other skills that were required for a team. That was the medical, I forget what their designation was, but anyway, the Special Forces medic, the Special Forces weapons expert, the Special Forces intelligence gathering expert, and the Special Forces radio operator school. Then there was an executive officer and a second lieutenant. The XO was a second or first lieutenant, and the officer in charge of the team was a captain. So all of these ranks were going through specialized training. At the same time, I was going through the demolitions and stuff like that. So training was scattered all over the states for those different skill sets. Radio operators were trained in another fort. The medics were trained at a hospital. They went through basic training they went through field surgery training. They went through mass casualty training, and then they had to spend time in a hospital emergency room.
Wow.
And, you consider the other skill sets, same for them. They went through the different segments of theirs and the intelligence. They spent time with the FBI, the CIA, and and then you put all those skill sets together for a month, and then that team prepares a mission, executes the mission, and it's a training mission, but you have a goal. You're inserted into a forest. You travel to the site where you're supposed to accomplish the goals of whatever the mission was. And then you get extracted and removed. And that takes about a month. So very interesting there. At the time we went through our team training, we were back at North Carolina and it was snowing. So all of our outside activities at that time was in the snow.
Oh, wow.
It was great, though. I loved it. But that's the wrap up of the training. It was from the time I went in December, clear through to the next December, I was in constant training. So it was a year long
worth of training. Wow.
Year long. And, as time went on, you just, it's almost like the skills mesh together. And that 10-man team that comes out at the other end of that training is like a machine.
Mm.
And everybody coordinates everything together, and you almost think is not 10 separate people, but one unit, one living unit.
Got it. That's interesting. It sounds like, based on how you described it, you've got all these individual people who are trying to perfect their skill. It sounds like a lot of improv work, like improvising.
The all of that training, the word improvised is used throughout all of those skills. I mean, we wound up having to and it's almost a requirement. You almost have to learn the skill of providing the materials, the munitions, the supplies. You almost have to be skilled at gathering those up in the field, even if you have to steal them from one of your other military units.
I wonder how that went down.
It works perfect. It works perfect. It's nothing more rewarding than to come home with a truckload of stuff you took from the Air Force.
That's not what I was expecting to hear. But I guess it makes sense. You got to use what is available, and hey, you're all on the same team, right? So it's got to.
Yes, that's it. And we've had, as we drove out with that truck, we had airmen salute us.
That's awesome. I'm going to kind of jump a question here because you were kind of going this route. What was it? I'm going to look at question number 5. Was this what you were expecting when you joined, this kind of stuff?
Yes and no. I had no idea when I went in what to expect until I sat down with that recruiter and he explained a lot of things to me. Once I got in there, everything he told me was true. But to me, it was much more, it was bigger than I thought.
Mm.
There was much more to it than what I was expecting, which was all good. It was all good. The bigger, the better. The more, the better.
There's even more than what you thought, and
yeah,
that had to be a good surprise.
As I went to learn through the training, now everybody that was going through that training was not new to the military. As we traveled through and as we got to the end of that training, when we put our team together, the captain had already been in the Army 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And he just entered the Special Forces. the first lieutenant, he had been through, did one tour of Vietnam as a private, went to officer candidate school, graduated from that, and went straight into special forces training.
Got it.
The several of the sergeants that were outranked me had done spent at least one enlistment in the military, either the Air Force, Marines, or something else.
Got it.
So there were full-time, lifetime career military people deciding somewhere in their career to go through the special forces qualification stuff.
Got it. I guess that makes sense. That because when I think about special forces, I think about it as kind of like that next level up, that military veterans, that it's that extra challenge. But for you, just to make sure I understand this, you basically went in it first thing.
Yes, I knew that when I went in that that was the goal I was to reach. My personal goal was to come out on the other end of all of that training as they promised, a E5 buck sergeant, special forces demolition man.
All right. Yeah, you really took
the A-team.
The A-team. There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask a couple of questions. These are actually from me because I was always curious. What did Granny and Granddaddy think about it whenever you signed up to go?
Well, Mother, of course, knew that I did not have to enlist because at that time the draft was still going on, and at the time I entered, I think it was probably the lowest quota number of enlistees that was being required. So theoretically, my draft number would have not been called up that year. Mm. And she couldn't understand why I wanted to enlist because I was in no danger of being drafted. But the kid in me was seeing it as an adventure, and I was destined to take that route to that adventure ever since I pulled that first cap pistol out and fired it. But Dad was more of a politician, Huh. And I recall these words he told me. He said, "There's no need for you to enlist. This war is not like World War II. This war is a lawyer politician war." And I remember those two words, lawyer, politician, war. I had no idea what he was saying. I had no comprehension of what he was implying. I thought that don't even make sense. Lawyers and politicians don't like to shoot guns and ride horses. But I recall those words, and now I'm fully aware of what he meant by it.
Yeah.
A lawyer politician war.
Sounds like Granddaddy was, I don't want to say necessarily against it, but it sounded like he had a polite protest against it.
He did, and he understood how it got started. But he never, in World War II and slightly in Korea, there was a goal.
Yeah.
This war had no goal other than to keep it going for year after year after year.
Wow.
Militarily, the war could have been over in whatever number of days they chose to make it over. But it just kept going on and on. And, with any war, people that are gung-ho for the cause, after so many thousands of people die and so many thousands of hearts are broken because of those deaths, it wears on the population, and the whole population gets tired of it, regardless of whatever reason they weren't tired of it before.
Yeah.
You can't talk about Vietnam without thinking about the 57,000 service people that died there, and what cost did they pay for the result that we got.
Yeah.
And that was what was Dad's take on the lawyer politician war.
Wow. Learned something interesting from Granddaddy and his perspective. That seems to be a common recurring theme, especially when people talk about the latter part of the war, the end of the war. How at the end you said that the war didn't have a clear, defined goal. One of the ways that I teach Vietnam is similar in that degree. Like there was no front line of battle. In Korea you had a front line, in World War II you had a front line, and there was like a measurable gain and loss on the battlefield, but Vietnam wasn't. I'm going to kind of hop a question here since we're already on this point. You said militarily the war could have been over just in a few months maybe.
Yes.
What do you feel that the U.S. could have done better during the war, politically, militarily? What do you think military high command, the government, what could they have done better?
Well, there was enough military experience in the higher ranks. Many of the colonels, higher ranked NCOs, generals, there was many of them left over from World War II and Korea.
Uh-huh.
They knew the skills, and they seen the successes in using those skills against the German military and the North Korean military. And if you took Vietnam and stuck it in somewhere in France, if you took the size of Vietnam and put it in France, overlay it on top of Germany or North Africa, you would see how tiny it is compared to the whole of World War II, and how the theater in Africa, how did we defeat Germany in Africa? How did we do what we did at Normandy and then march through France, up through Italy, and clear through Germany so quickly? We did that in 2 years at the most.
Yeah.
3 years, because we turned it over to our generals. They implemented the maneuvers, staged the units, combined the use of the Air Force and the ground forces and the naval forces, all in a focused effort. We could have been in Hanoi probably in, I don't know, a month. We could have owned Hanoi. We could have been on the Chinese border in no longer than it took to go from Normandy to the Rhine River. In the amount of time or less time than it took our forces during World War II. So the hardware and the personnel and the skills and the tactics, the munitions, everything was there. And at any one time, all they had to do was focus it and turn the military loose and let them capture Hanoi.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing's over then, because it's got all the coastal areas. The Navy could do its thing the way it did in World War II. The Marines could do the coastal part of it. The Air Force covers the land. The 82nd and 101st Airborne that was in World War II was there in Vietnam. the dozens of civilian support contractors were there. We had allies in Thailand. We had Japan was on our side at that time. All of Europe was on our side. I mean, it's a nothing burger that we could have had that thing done and over.
Wow. Why do you think, we know what's written in the textbooks, but from your perspective, why did U.S. officials restrain the military? Why do you feel they were restrained?
The word I've learned lately is geopolitical. I hear that word a lot.
Geopolitical.
Geopolitical. And that encompasses everything that held us back there or would have propelled us forward there. You have to look at starting with President Kennedy. He never wanted to do what we did, so he restrained everything. Actually, he was the effort behind what is the Green Berets now. He was the I forget the correct term, but he was big in developing the center that trains all the special forces.
Mm-hmm.
All right, his politics was different than LBJ's, and after President Kennedy was killed, LBJ was elected, and his primary focus was to enlarge the war for as long as he could keep it going. That's what I think.
No.
For whatever reasons, there's pages opinion as to why and what that was all about, but geopolitical is the word.
Geopolitical. Yeah, that's I know with current events, with like the Russia-Ukraine thing, that's a term I hear a lot going on, like Russia trying to maintain its sphere of influence in Eastern Europe. And I know there's like the whole containment thing and whatnot with Vietnam, and that's actually going to get us into another question over here. It's about your interaction with the Vietnamese. So I'll just go ahead and jump to this question. So, did you? How often do you interact with Vietnamese soldiers in Vietnam?
Actually, very little due to the nature of what our mission was. When I got out of training, I was assigned to the 1st Special Forces Group, which was stationed and headquartered on Okinawa, Japan. Well, it was Okinawa, USA at the time. All right. Vietnam was the primary focus of the 1st Special Forces Group on Okinawa, but it wasn't the only focus.
Mm-hmm.
All of Southeast Asia, all of the Pacific, all of the geography up and down there where Russia and China join, all of that territory up in there, all of China was the theater that 1st Special Forces Group operated in. But the 1st Special Forces Group was installed, I think, in like 1963. And primary, all Special Forces activities at that time came from Okinawa into Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand. And the mission that I was assigned, the team that I was assigned to was assigned a mission to train I guess you could just say train mercenaries to interdict the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and we did that in the at a camp on the Thai-Laotian border. So the mercenaries that they hired, that were hired to be trained to do this operation, came from all over. They came from Vietnam, they came from Laos, they came from Thailand, they came from Burma. You know, mercenaries is just a paid volunteer to fight just for the money.
Right.
And that's what did. Our camp trained 300 mercenaries. I think was the sum of what our camp did, but then there was camps all over Thailand did the same thing. And they were combined into larger units. And then the activities that they did, the missions, the actual combat that they got involved with, I never got to see. We put them on the helicopters to send them into combat after they went through the training, and we received them when they come back, what was left of them.
So you're training these mercenaries in preparation for them to see combat, but you yourself did not see combat that much, or
no? Our camp was attacked one time, and it was a pitiful attack. It resulted in no casualties, and we carried out ambush missions after that, which resulted in no confrontation with the bad guys.
Gotcha. When you were training these mercenaries, you said they were all over, whether they were Vietnamese, Laotian, from Thailand. What was it like? Were y'all able to easily build relationships with them, or was it kind of like a tense relationship?
It kind of, you know, I was green. I was new to it all. But the guys that I was on my team, they had done it under JFK in the 63, 60, some of them had been there in 63 and 64 and did the same thing with the group of Vietnamese called Mountainards. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's some hill tribesmen.
Mountainards?
Yes. That's so. Two of the older sergeants on our team had trained those in the early years of Vietnam. But what I'm saying is, I was green at it, but there was very experienced servicemen that had done it before in country in Vietnam during the early years.
Was there
like you said, it was, for me, it was uncomfortable. Because they look at me like I guess they look at me like I just know how to tie my boots and that's about it. But I have to relay through the interpreter the skills that they need. But they got kind of impressed when I showed them how to fire those rockets and things out of the cardboard tubes.
Gotcha. That's actually a question that a student wanted to ask. Was it very difficult to communicate with these troops, these mercenaries you were training?
It was in the beginning, but once I got used to working with the interpreter, I had the same interpreter with me throughout the whole, I guess it was almost a year that I was there in that theater. But it was once I got familiar with using an interpreter and not going too fast and slowing down to where he could explain and making sure that he knew each session that we was going to be with him, that he knew what I was going to talk about. It started working good. And then he was hired as an interpreter for this operation. There's about 12 interpreters with us. but he was a school teacher in Bangkok. He was a Bangkok school teacher.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I enjoyed working with him. I cannot think of his name. I've got a picture of him and me and a couple other people, but I cannot think of his name. But I called it 100,000 times while I was over there.
Oh wow. I imagine you probably picked up some of the local language.
A little bit, but I have forgotten so much now. I can still recognize a few words. The everything was we used the Thai language and we used the English, and we had to use Laotian.
Uh-huh.
I recall having to get our Laotian interpreter involved with a platoon of Laotian soldiers because they were all from an area, same part of Laos. I was thinking there was something peculiar about their language, like tribal language.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, getting used to working with an interpreter, it took a while, but then it works out after a while. Yeah. And then if and see, along with us, there were a special forces team of Thai paratroopers, which I got to know two of those guys real well, and they were some very dedicated military from the Thai nation. In Thailand, it's still under a king and a queen.
Yeah, the monarch. Yeah,
monarch. Yeah, and they're very dedicated to the monarch.
Oh, neat.
Yes, it was. It was very because they spoke of their king just like they do in England.
Like this national symbol, a figure of the people of Thailand, I guess.
Yeah, and they made some news here last week or so.
Yeah. One of the oldest reigning monarchs, or so I've.
I think so. I'm not familiar with all of them, but they still have the royalty there now.
Yes. Yeah, there's like I said, one of the few monarchs, one of the oldest monarchs that thrived. I'm making this question up as we go, but working with other soldiers, what was their relationship with the South Vietnamese? Like, were they sympathetic toward the South Vietnamese? Did the people of Thailand support their cause? Did the Cambodians support their cause? Like, what was it like in that general area? Who supported who?
I wished I could put my finger on the words to use to describe that. Because, being as they're border nations to each other, you would think they would be sympathetic towards the South Vietnamese big time.
Uh-huh.
But when you put Cambodia in there, Cambodia, in my opinion, didn't know what kind of country they wanted to be. And they were right in the firing line of most everything that affected Vietnam and Laos. And the Thai military was strong on their border because they did not know what to expect. Because Cambodia borders Thailand, Laos borders Thailand. And those secret armies that our government used, I think they kept everybody on edge.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to describe the atmosphere that I sensed while I was there. But our goal was to run these people through, and we were there when the helicopters came and picked them up. Uh, the helicopters took them into combat, and brought what was left of them back.
Well, was the casualty rate um, was it pretty bad?
No, no, not really. But all of them that we sent in there did not come back.
Hmm.
That was a common thing that we were all, us Americans were all questioning. We know they all did not get was not combat casualties, but as many that left, there wasn't that many helicopters that came back, implying that they may have got separated or lost or continued the mission north or south or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So we just didn't know.
Wow.
But there was several. We always had to help the medics, our medics, when unusual amounts of casualties came back. And but the I guess you would call the Thai Red Cross participated in a lot of it. That's what it appeared to me. But and then we turned them over to the Thai medical people just when it was convenient for transport to get them to them.
Right.
But I learned a lot of first aid there. I sure did. But
Imagine.
I guess the serious casualties that required serious medical attention were the helicopters just took them on to the nearest Thai facility or U.S. air base or something like that. Because there was a Yubon air base was not too far from there. Their jets and bombers and low flying prop planes, they flew over our camp all the time.
That's right, because there was that's where a lot of Air Force bombers flew out from during Operation Rolling Thunder, right?
Yes, it was. That the fighter jets protected the bombers. The bombers came from Okinawa
Oh, okay.
and Guam, and the fueling tankers came from Okinawa. And but the fighter support and all that came from UBON and UDORN and the Navy.
Got it.
And the rescue, recovery, and stuff like that.
Got it. So overall, how long were you in Thailand? Well, was that where you predominantly were throughout your entire tour of duty?
Yes, we had. I was there at that camp for 6 months solid. On the Laotian border, I was there 6 months. We were doing remote training. We did remote training in the inner part of Thailand for a couple of months, and then we went before the camp was ready. As soon as the camp got ready, we were the first team to take up residence in that camp. But I would guess 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
God.
But we spent when we was on Okinawa, we spent nearly 2 months training for that. And then when we left, another team came in from Okinawa and took over from us. And like I said, we had a number of camps throughout Thailand doing the same thing. So the activity, and then, there's no telling what they supported, what their missions were out of their camp or whatever. You just never know.
Yeah. So, while you were in Thailand, some of the students are curious with the type of stuff that you used and that you did. One question was, did you get to use the tiger stripe camo? Did y'all use that?
When we were getting our equipment to leave Okinawa with, I was given 5 sets of fatigues just for that part of the country. I was given 1 set of tiger stripes and 4 sets of jungle camouflage. And those tiger stripes look so good. I was not going to wear them. I wanted to bring them home with me, and I got them today. I still got them.
Oh, right.
And they're almost brand new. They're almost brand new because I didn't wear them.
Oh, wow.
The thing about the tiger stripes, if they're fabricated, they get the stripes horizontal. And believe it or not, horizontal in the jungle or in any woods, a horizontal line is out of place. Everything grows vertical. So actually, the tiger stripes would give you away.
It wasn't very effective.
In some parts of Vietnam, it probably was. I don't know, but once you get to, using your eyes when you're moving through the woods.
Yeah.
And I gathered this up as a kid hunting deer. A deer, his back is horizontal. So if you're looking for a horizontal in a vertical world, it's easy to spot.
Yeah.
Same thing with the tiger stripes, but they look good.
That's all that matters.
They look good, yeah. And they were made out of thicker material, something like. But yeah, I kept that set. I can't get in them now, of course, but still got them. And you're frozen. You are frozen. There you go. Now you're back live.
All right. You still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I glitched there for a second. It looks like we're still recording, so we're good. One student asked, the Green Beret, did y'all always wear that when you were, whenever you were carrying out orders, or was that for only like special occasions?
It was the uniform when you wasn't in country, you might say.
Okay.
If you're in country, then you're in your camouflage and your bush hat and such as that. You don't wear that. It serves no purpose in the jungle. It's not practical. But on Okinawa, when we were 8 to 5 duty, routine duty, dress uniform, fatigues, we wore it. It was our uniform. It was our hat to wear.
Got it.
When you had to wear a uniform hat. Got
it. You said for like routine, what was your regular routine when you were deployed?
Well, when the routine when I'm deployed.
Yes.
When I was in country.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was looking back on it, it was continuous alertness. There was relaxed times when you're training and all. It's just like any other, just like you in the front of the classroom. But our classroom was in the field somewhere, like on a range, a gun range, a firing range, a hand grenade range, a rocket range. Is outdoor classroom, just like the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
But then after the training was done, everybody marches back. Oh, okay. Yeah. You dismiss the class and you march back. It might be maybe not a half a mile, but it's some distance you have to march from the range back into the camp.
Okay.
And incidentally, I dismissed a demolitions class. They marched back, and I was gathering up the stuff to go back to camp. I was by myself, and I was walking back to the camp by the airfield, and I noticed somebody was following me, and it was two enemy soldiers following me, and they had been observing our training session out there on the range.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know if they was going to try to capture me or what. Anyway, and all I had on me was a pistol and a hand grenade. I didn't have any of the other weapons that we carried. My fault, because I had delayed in gathering up the training materials, and I was delinquent on one thing. I was by myself. All right, so they followed me back, and I saw them in my mirror. And I got on our walkie-talkie and called ahead to the camp radio man, and he said, "Okay, go down by the airstrip. We'll set up an ambush and we'll take them out."
Oh, wow.
When they walk by. But anyway, I took them that direction. They never did try to rush me. All I could do was throw the hand grenade and go. But they never did try to rush me, and I guess they sensed that something wasn't right. When I got close to the ambush site, they left.
Oh, wow.
But our team had already set up an ambush. They were going to take them out as soon as they got in range.
Oh, man. I'm sure that was nerve-wracking, that whole situation.
It was, but it was all of the training that you go through, it's almost second nature.
Oh, wow. It's like I remember chit-chatting with my brother about some of his experiences in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he says there's like an instinct that kicks in when you're in a dangerous scenario. Is that what it's like?
Yes, very much so. And the repetition that you go through, it's almost as if your mind tells your body how to function without you even thinking about it.
Oh, wow. I guess that's the point of the training. So you're not thinking the situation through. You're just, you know what to do because you've done it so many times and you execute that.
That is true. And that's the theory behind the draft. You draft people right out of high school. The military does. They have they're, coming out of high school. Well, your mind is full of education, but it's also, and that's why your mind is open to the further education that the military wants you to take on as second nature. Fresh. Your mind is fresh.
More willing to adapt, more willing
and in most cases, it can be molded. The learning is easier for the young people than it is for the older people.
Right. Absolutely. You brought up what equipment you were using. You had your pistol and your grenade. What were the typical weaponry that you used? Which one was your favorite and which was your least favorite?
Well, nobody throughout the training, especially when you got to special forces training, the number one sin that would get you thrown out of your class was if somebody could reach your rifle before you could, implying that you never allow your weapon to be away from your body.
Gotcha.
It's right there with you. If you go to the bathroom, it's right there with you. If you're eating, it's right there across your lap. Your weapon never gets separated. And if a instructor can reach your weapon before you can, you're dismissed from the training instantly.
Oh, wow.
And the incident I just told you about with the people following me, I had the pistol and I had the hand grenade, but I should have had the rifle.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was carrying so much stuff out there and bringing so much stuff back, I didn't take the rifle with me.
Now, when you say the rifle, I'm assuming you're talking about the M16 or something.
Yes, we were equipped with the at that time there was, as far as I can recall, there was just two versions of the AR-15. It was the regular full length M16, and then there was a paratroopers version of that same caliber gun. It had a shorter barrel and a shorter. Everything was shorter.
Yeah. Is that the one that had like a little collapsible stock on it? I remember seeing some movies and some articles. It basically kind of looked like a modern M4, but not exactly. It was but it was shorter, more compact.
And see, we had weapons that the regular Army units didn't have because our Special Forces weapons sergeants, we had Russian weapons, and we had AK-47s and short versions of AK-47s. And I had a grenade launcher, which I preferred that over the rifle if I was in the field. But training, where we were training, I was supposed to have a rifle with me.
Yeah.
All I had was the pistol and the hand grenade. But see, I'm training. There was a platoon of soldiers that we trained in, and they all had their rifles with them.
Yeah.
But when I dismissed them, they took off back. They marched on back, and I was hanging back gathering up stuff. And that's how I got caught in that situation.
That's amazing to think you're in this camp and how close the enemy is to your. When you say camp, are you talking about something that's like deep in the jungle, or are you talking about like a structured base?
It's a there was it's called a base camp. They just went out there in the jungle. It was in the middle of nowhere on the Thai-Laotian border, and they go in there, they build a runway, and they build this camp.
Oh, wow.
It has trenches all the way around it and barbed wire fences, and it was still under construction the whole time we were there, and had barracks, but it's a rough camp.
Gotcha.
And the water comes out of the ground, and we had to build a dam on the creek to furnish all the non-potable water, and I think all the drinking water came out of a well.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's a rough camp, and I look on Google Maps, and I can still see the outlines of it.
Oh, wow.
It's a Google map of that area. You can see the runway. Of course, everything's grown up now.
Sure.
And the trails in and out of Laos, they're actually paved trails right now.
I might have to dig that up.
Huh?
I might have to dig that up.
It's very interesting for me to look at that and see what it is now and what it was then, because it was water buffaloes were everywhere. The odd thing about coming in contact with the enemy, we would there was a couple of villages nearby there that we went into those villages sometimes to eat some of the local food, and this was crazy. But we're sitting there at a table in one little outdoor cafe, me and a couple of other Special Forces guys and interpreters, our interpreters. We're sitting there at a table, and across this dusty road, this road through the village, sitting at another table was the enemy.
Oh.
Looking at us.
Oh,
we did not know they were the enemy till the interpreters told us they were.
Oh, man.
Till somebody pointed it out to them.
And just right over there across.
Just right across, you could hit them with a slingshot.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't see any weapons at first, but then once the interpreter told me that, you could see their weapons. They had them hidden. what they were doing there, I don't know. They may have been visiting relatives. You never know.
Oh, wow.
But see, Thailand, I think, was a off limits place for combat. I don't think anybody participated. I don't recall any attacks or any cross border issues or things like that, except for that one time our camp was shot at from the Laotian side.
Yeah.
But that was a strange feeling once our interpreter told us that. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know whether to just, we didn't have a radio with us either.
Yeah.
And we went back, we explained it to our XO, and then he started, he got the radio operator to chat with the other. We have radio processes and protocols and times and such as that. And they got to passing that around the countryside amongst the other teams. And that got all the teams looking for the same thing up and down the Thai border. Because news like that it excites everybody. Even they even pulled the Thai artillery up close to the river nearest where we were at from that news. That they I don't know how many units that they pulled up that close to the border, but they got excited about it.
Huh. Yeah, it seems like everything's that you kind of said it earlier. Everybody's still kind of on edge, not wanting the conflict to spill over into their border. Got it.
Yeah, and see, one of the first things we did when we got there that we had to do was there was only one bridge across the nearest river that was inside the Thai border, and it was like an interstate bridge. It was built that way, but we had to set charges on the pillars just in case there was an attack.
So you had that place wired to blow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
wow. The charges did not have blasting caps in them. They just had to be placed. It's more or less a, what do you call it? Trying to encourage somebody not to use that bridge for military purposes.
No.
But there was a the night that we were shot at, they were expecting a North Vietnamese movement of tanks down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and they was afraid they might try to turn right and come across into Thailand.
Huh.
And I think that's why all the excitement. But anyway, we had to be prepared to blow that bridge up.
Just in case.
Just in case
it spilled over. Did any? I know you shared that experience. Was there ever a moment where enemy troops were in sight, and it looked like they were about to come over? Did it ever come close to that?
Not that we could see, but in the military intelligence world, you're only told what you need to know to do your job that you're doing. So there was a B-52 strike could be 50 miles away, and you would think it was right in your backyard. There was one of those that was between us and Vietnam one time. So they only do that when there's heavy troop movements. And then just an alert we got to be alert for tank activity. And our camp was positioned in the only geographical area where tanks could cross through into Thailand without having to go over the Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Our camp was right in the middle of that gateway.
Oh wow! So you would, so y'all really had a good close-up view of traffic in and around the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That
It was just over the mountain from where we were at. You could see if you went up in a helicopter, and you could see far enough to where you could see where parts of it was.
oh wow!
And you can see it. I mean, we had a big map that had everything mapped out in our intel room. It's, and everybody in the military, everybody knows what somebody, someplace inside of the intelligence rooms around the world, everybody knows what A123 is doing.
A123.
Yeah, that was the name of our team.
Oh wow!
And of course, there's hundreds of those teams everywhere in the world, probably thousands of them. But there's somebody that knows what every one of them is doing.
Like somebody got a little bit of a close eye on you.
I mean, it gets centralized. I mean, that's just the way military intelligence is. They have to know what their forces are, what they're doing, what kind of shape you're in.
That's actually a question that one student wrote, and I think it's a real good question. It's what was management of the Vietnam War like? The students know it from the broader sense. They know Mac V. They know Westmoreland. He was the head general and whatnot. But how did I'm trying to kind of see if I can consolidate this question. How did y'all cooperate with other units, like say regular Army units or Air Force units or Marines? What was the management of that like? Was there anything that you could tell us on that?
I know very little about what went beyond our camp, but the fact that the organization of our outfit, our team is the operational unit of the special forces. In those circumstances, the A team behind the A team is a larger team called a B team, which coordinates activities for several A teams. Mm-hmm. And then past the B team is the, I guess what they call the company headquarters, or the C team. They used to call it the C team, which would be like the company headquarters of several B teams, which has several A teams. Now, we only know what one A team is doing. That's ours.
Gotcha.
The activities of all the others past that, somebody knows at the B team level. Somebody knows at the company level. Then somebody knows at the battalion level.
Gotcha. Oh, wow.
We only know what our little gathering does, but everything like I see something, I see two guys following me. We did what we did. As soon as I get back in there, I have to explain every detail that I can remember to our XO, our CO, and our team sergeant. I mean, they picked my brain, my memory of everything that they could pick it up about that incident. All right, that goes out on the next radio contact. And then questions come back down about that very same incident, and answers go back up. It's like stuff coming from the cloud and going to the cloud. We never see what was done with it, but somebody wants to know about it. Just that one little incident.
I guess they had to, because they just wanted to, is it because they just want a better understanding of the whole situation, or did you feel like they were kind of trying to find fault in you? Because I remember you said you didn't have
No,
for.
nobody's trying to find fault. They're trying to piece a bigger puzzle together.
Got it. Got it.
And something that, like if you see a water buffalo out there where there should be no water buffaloes, somebody wants to know why the water buffalo was out there.
Huh. Huh.
And it means something to somebody as it goes back up.
Every detail mattered.
Yes, very.
Every detail. Speaking of details, one detail a student wanted to ask was they love we know the helicopters in Vietnam. Did you get to fly frequently in those helicopters?
Yes. Remember I mentioned riding the horses and shooting the guns?
Yeah.
Well, the helicopter is that horse. Everything is done on a helicopter. You go into a place on a helicopter, that same helicopter comes to get you.
Gotcha.
You anything you train with involves a helicopter.
Gotcha.
Anything you logistics is handled by helicopters. Now we had a runway that was equipped to handle the activities of a dozen helicopters at one time. We also a runway was capable of handling the C-130s and everything smaller than that.
Yeah.
But the helicopter is the horse.
Got it. Did you get to shoot the guns from the helicopters?
No, I didn't. But the helicopter takes you to the ground where you shoot the guns.
Okay, then. There you go.
The helicopter is the horse, and still is now. It really is.
Yeah, they're still used heavily with, but
from right here where we live, there's a Air National Guard unit in Birmingham that's got several helicopter units assigned to it, and they pass through where we live all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like the first time you're waiting in the woods, there's a jungle waiting, or either training or real life. The sound of that helicopter coming to get you is almost like your favorite song that you like to listen to over and over.
It was a good sound to hear when it was coming.
Oh yes, it's very much so.
I hear that a lot from.
Very much so. That helicopter's bringing you something good to eat. It's going to take you someplace else good. It's going to get you out of harm. It's going to protect you. It's going to make life better for you.
Oh, wow.
And you can hear it as soon as you hear it. I mean, you could hear it 10 miles away.
Yeah.
And it still sounds the same because, you hear it getting louder and louder.
Always something good coming from, and I'm assuming these are Hueys that you're dealing with largely.
Well, see, where we were at, we used the Hueys, of course. At that time, they had the Cobras. We didn't have to have any contact with Cobra pilots, but we see them flying over. But we also used the, I don't know what the name of it is, but it's the old Coast Guard type of helicopter where the pilot sits up real high and looks down on the people getting on and off. And then, of course, we use the, what they call them, the Jolly Green Giants, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, helicopters was your buddy.
You always enjoyed hearing those helicopters as they're coming through. There's actually another veteran I just got an interview conducted with him, and he was a helicopter pilot. He flew the predominantly Huey, and he was a medevac pilot. So he would go in, grab. I just got the tapes the other day, and I'll be reviewing through them, but it seems like the helicopter is like the symbol of military equipment for Vietnam. It was just so dominantly used, predominantly.
Yes, it was, and they could be, this was a training. I never had to do this in actual danger or anything, but the helicopters used, they don't have to land. The helicopters can get out there and drop a rope, and then you have to rappel down that rope to the ground. And that's quite an exercise, but it's always part of the skill set you have. It's something you have to be comfortable with doing safely.
Just a part of the process of the war.
Yeah, so you could drop half of a team. 6 people can go down at one time. The helicopter could fly over, and 6 people could be on the ground in just a few minutes, and the helicopter be gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And did just off the wall question, did you ever have to get helicoptered into locations where you knew there was like enemy troop movement, or was it like a hostile LZ? Did you ever have to do that kind of stuff?
We, as part of one of the training exercises we did with the people we trained, and I do not recall if they took us into Laos to do this or not, but we had to set up an ambush. It was actually after the guys followed me back to camp that day. Shortly after that, we had to take a ambush team. We were taking in, the helicopter landed. It was a part of the jungle I had not been familiar with or been around before, but it was a good helicopter flight towards the border. I don't know if they took us into the other country or not, but anyway, we got out. We had to set up the ambush. We stayed there all night. Nothing happened, and then the helicopters came and picked us up. And I was very anxious to get on the helicopter. Nothing happened, but it's a nervous feeling you have being the last person in the line, not marching, but maneuvering back towards the helicopters. So we had to walk. We hear the helicopters coming, and so we have to start moving towards the direction where the helicopter is going to land. And it just so happens that I was the last person. I had to gather everybody up that missed a turn or something.
Yeah.
And that's somewhat anxious.
I'm gonna imagine
that if you don't get on that helicopter, it's a long walk ahead for you.
Probably uncomfortable because you would probably likely be in hostile territory.
I think we were, but they never did say. But we never did see anything during that 24 hours that we was out there.
Oh, wow.
And it was a well-traveled trail too, but we never did see anything.
Gotcha. All right, let's see what other questions I got here. It's starting to get late. We want to start wrapping it up. So I've only got a few questions left, and this is good stuff. All of this. I kind of wish I asked you before, especially visiting Granny's house. I wish I had done this before. A couple of questions that the students have is, did you ultimately support the decisions of your higher command? Like, did you feel that they were making good decisions, the people that were above you?
Well, locally in the I had no reason to doubt that our immediate chain of command was anything but professional and thorough, had our best interest in mind, and would exert no lack of energy in helping us out of a bad situation, up through our group commander, who was a colonel. I mean, they were concerned about us all being successful. I really felt that.
Yeah.
Beyond the group level, when you get into the larger units of the theater of operations and such as that, I felt like they were capable of accomplishing anything. But I always felt like they were controlled. They were metered. They were idled down. That was always in the background.
Yeah.
That we could only go so far, and we had limits. That was pretty obvious.
Going back to the politics,
Yes.
not letting the military do what the military needed to do to win the war.
Yes, and the sad thing about it, I think we're headed the same route with what's going on in Ukraine. It looks and feels exactly like the beginnings of Vietnam again.
That's actually a question I have here is what mistakes in Vietnam do you feel are being repeated today?
Not seeking other solutions. If there's a reason somebody's wants to go to combat, it's got to be a real good reason. It can't be any hidden reasons why you want to commit a nation to killing its own people. For what goal? The goal's got to be established. The start and the end has got to be known. Doing things like we're doing in Ukraine, the drumbeat to get started overshadows any ending goal. And that's the way it was with Vietnam. It was speculation and promises of slowing the spread of communism. Yet the end result was we never accomplished that at all. Saigon became part of North Vietnam. It's a whole country again, and we spent all of that we spent accomplishing nothing. And it does appear that we're headed that same way in Ukraine. My opinion is Ukraine means nothing to us.
Okay.
If Russia wants the whole thing, let them have it. If they only want part of it, let them have it. Now, I've got an 18-year-old grandson, and even though I enjoyed every minute that I was in the military, I do not want him to have to make a choice. And I do not want anybody to tell him he's got to join the military.
Oh, wow.
I want everybody, if they want to, fine. I wanted to, and it did me good, but it was my choice.
All right. Oh, wow.
And I hate seeing us headed this way now. I really do. And I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people that feel the same way. And we can, just one mistake, one event takes place, and could just catapult us into something we got no business allowing to happen. Geopolitics.
That's the buzzword in this.
Geopolitics. And what my dad said, what your granddaddy said.
Yeah.
A lion, lawyer, politician war.
A lion, lawyer, politician war. That definitely gave me a new perspective of granddaddy, because I never asked him. I mean, I did ask him a couple of questions about his days, but not so much on his thoughts and opinions on the Vietnam War. So you definitely gave me a perspective of Granddaddy from that one. Um, so going back to your service, one student asked, going along with mistakes, was there anything while you were in service that you did regret?
That I did regret?
That you did regret, like something that maybe you wish you could have changed, something that maybe you could have done better?
No, I can't think of anything. My intention was to stay in.
Uh-huh.
I've really intended to stay in, but I decided to get out at the last minute. And then when I came back to Birmingham, I stayed in the National Guard Special Forces for 2 more years.
Yeah. In total, how many years was that in the military? 5 years.
5 years. It was 5 years. But I enjoyed everything I did.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared many, many times. And you have to lean on your faith when you're scared like that. And you do. Mm. And you come to terms with other, friends and other acquaintances that aren't as lucky as you.
Yeah.
That never get to live past being 23 years old or 20 years old or 22. And that stays with you. But as far as I never really had to know that I killed someone, but that's always there. It's always there that you've got a weapon, you're trying to use it, and its purpose is to kill somebody else. And I never had to do that I knew. So I'm pretty sure that would be something I would regret.
Wow. Aside from the military conflict and the war, what was the humanitarian side of the conflict? Did you ever see, like aid or help given, helping lives, getting outside of the war? What was the humanitarian aspect of the war, if there was one?
Yes. Oh, yes. And being in special forces, there was lots of opportunity for stuff you just mentioned. While we were in Thailand, we made pairs of us. Part of that, part of the history and part of the goal of special forces is to win over the local population.
Uh-huh.
Implying that, and in my case, I made several trips to do just that in the local elementary schools there in Thailand, out in the country. And the number one thing the teachers wanted us to do was read a story in English that they had been teaching their class. And I can't recall the stories I had to read, but I recall this, that being from where we're at down here, we pronounce the word sugar like we say it.
Yeah.
And the teacher could not understand what I was saying for some reason when we come across the word sugar. And the more I tried to emphasize it, the more the word got drawn out. Sugar. Sugar. But the kids, that we did that, we got to go to do some agricultural work on a chicken farm that was run by the government, But and I recall the people that took care of the chickens, and they taught me a lot about the Thai chickens. And then we got to go to we had to do these in the hearts of the people things with some Buddhist monks that had a Buddhist temple way out there. There was nothing around it. But we relied on our interpreters to help us with the Buddhist religion. I don't recall much about it, other than it was very sacred to them. And we were trying to always work with the local police. A police station had been attacked, and several policemen were killed in a province near us. And we had to go recon security for that. And then there was one other event we had to participate in, and it involved a fishing tournament on one of the rivers.
Mm-hmm.
They used nets and stuff like that, and we did a show and tell with them, the local fishermen. And then there was always, I didn't get to participate in many of them. The medics were all the time doing clinics amongst the villages and tribes up and down the area we were at. They would do inoculations and blood tests and visit with the villagers and officials that had physical problems, you know. But I never did any of that. I just did the elementary schools and the fishing tournaments.
That's neat though, and that's something we did talk about when we studied the Green Berets, that y'all did in many ways act like diplomats. Like you.
Yeah, that was a word I was missing.
Ah.
That was the word I was missing, and that's the word right there.
Yeah.
Being diplomatic, whether you're dealing with a teacher in a classroom or a mayor in a town upstream or one downstream, or a police department's squad out in the field, or the hospitals and clinics and stuff that we set up.
Mm-hmm.
Diplomatic stuff, yeah.
Wow.
That was all fulfilling, very, very.
Oh, I can imagine. You were talking about the school children. I can only picture that class as you're in there, probably in like what, your fatigues or something.
Yeah, just like that. And it was an open air classroom. There was no air conditioning, just fans everywhere. And,
oh wow!
And they were very young children, and the teacher was enthused, the kids were enthused, and the other school officials, they were standing in the doorway listening and watching. And it was a very enlightening thing for me. I really enjoyed it.
Hearing some of that stuff, one question a student asked was, how do you feel about the depictions of the Vietnam War in movies, video games, music, TV shows? You know, I know a lot of films came out in the 80s about the Vietnam War, Apocalypse Now, Platoon, these kinds of things. How do you feel about those depictions of the war?
Reading criticisms of the movies, some of them were the number one thing that I had trouble getting used to when I first went in the military was the amount of cussing that came out of people's mouths. And, you know, the background that I had, saying a foul word would cause you some pain.
Yeah.
But there, military, it's just it is one of those things that you have to get used to. And throughout hardships and times, difficult times when you're struggling, and under stress and scared and everything else, a few foul words came out of my mouth in a conflict or something like that. But in the movie, that's it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
That you hear the way it is in a movie. In the military, it is somewhat that way.
Yeah.
Movies can be. The movie that encouraged me to join was that movie about the Green Berets.
Is that the one with John Wayne?
Yes.
Yeah.
John Wayne was always my number one movie attraction. I watched everything that come out that he was in, including the African movies and the all the war movies and all that. But anyway, a lot of what they were trying to depict was accurate in the movie. A lot of things that they show the team doing was something that Special Forces teams do.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all of it. Everything they showed a Special Forces team was capable of doing and did do those things. Just the Hollywood interpretation of how it was done is somewhat hokey.
Mm.
And but the professionalism of the Special Forces personnel was appeared to be accurate with what I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very ideologic. The word I'm trying to think. The soldiers in Special Forces are ideologues. They believe in what they're doing. They feel what they're doing. You can't go through all that training and exposure to the things you're exposed to without feeling it.
Yeah.
And it's, in the military, it's pretty good money too. It's rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing to get rich over, but it's rewarding.
What would you say, whether because of movies or TV shows, what do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of the whole war?
Of Vietnam?
Yes.
Misunderstood aspect. The early years of the war, I'm saying the majority of the population and the majority of the soldiers that volunteered approached it just like we approached World War II.
Wow.
The early years of the war.
Yeah.
But there again, when the draft is activated, like it was, and the hundreds of thousands of military people that were drafted, they were drafted because they did not want to volunteer. That puts a whole different kind of population in the military. And justified because they don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And when people, that means that a population is not on board with this military thing that's happening when the draft comes about. And when you're drafting people to go off and try to kill people or be killed, it better be taken serious. There's got to be a start and there's got to be a stop. And we got to know when that stop is.
Mm-hmm.
And what that goal is in between, which Vietnam didn't have. It did not have a World War II type goal. And the population got fed up with it. And the politicians that were behind getting us there eventually went away. but the scars are still there, and it's taken. It'll never be healed. Those scars, but the um, the benefit is we have the wisdom to not let it happen again. And I hope everybody's on board with that, with what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your question was.
No, you got it. You got it. It was what was misunderstood about the war, and you explained it's something that I have not thought about. People going in thinking, okay, this is a World War II thing. We're going to go in, measurable goal, defeat the enemy. Hurrah, boys, we're going home. But it didn't turn out that way.
Yes, and that broke a lot of hearts, and it there's another word I can't think of. It disillusioned a lot of people that was willing to answer that call and go do it voluntarily.
No.
And if there's a threat of another draft, I'm going to be big time against it.
Mm-hmm.
Big time.
Lord willing, that does not happen. I would. I know the world's got some conflicts going on right now, but hopefully that is not the case.
Yes.
Because I hear a lot of the same, people like, whatever happens, we don't need to go back to a war. It's
And in my case, there was on the country and western circuit, there was a I wish I could think of the artist that sung it, but it involves Oklahoma. And I think it was Merle Haggard that sang this song about the Okie from Muskogee.
I think I heard that before.
You can pull it up on YouTube. But that song right there depicts the population at the beginning of the Vietnam War.
Huh.
It said, "I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee." Pull it up on YouTube sometime and listen to it. And listen to the words of it. And that kind of sums up pre-Vietnam.
Pre-Vietnam?
Yeah. 10 years later, nobody felt that way.
Burley Haggard and Willie Nelson?
Could be. They were a pair. I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee.
Got it.
Is that a city in Oklahoma, Muskogee?
When I hear Muskogee, I think Muskogee County, Georgia, which is, around where Fort Benning is. But I don't know if that's from Oklahoma and Muskogee. Okay, so yeah, 13th largest city in Oklahoma. I did a quick search on it. So yeah. It is a town in Oklahoma.
Well, the early 60s music was reflecting tunes like that.
Uh-huh.
But the mid 60s was anti any of that.
Uh-huh.
And then the 70s was, we're done with this stuff and we're not doing it no more.
Yeah. I actually took a class in college. It wasn't on music, but it was on films. And we watched how films changed from the early 60s to the late 60s and into the 70s a little bit. How the themes changed drastically. Like, there was a cultural shift that happened in that decade.
It was, yeah. Music and theater played a big part in maneuvering the population for the events that was fixing to happen down the road.
Yeah. That's a time. That's one heck of a time period in history, but it's fascinating to learn and study because in many ways, a lot of what modern society is going through seems to be a remnant of what took place in that time. We're still kind of feeling an aftershock of it. Fascinating time period. But I know it's getting late. I don't want to keep you up too long, so we'll just kind of wrap this up with one closing question. Your most memorable experience while you're in service?
It would have to have been that time I spent in Thailand. But the the time the whole time that I spent 2 years in a in the 1 year in training, 2 years active special forces activities, and outside of the theaters that we operated in as a combat team, such as that, I really enjoyed the people I was around that were military families.
Mm-hmm.
Very much similar to outside of the military. A military base is like a small city, and it's made up of families of the people that's going to make a career out of the military. And it's no different than any other industrial town or small town, large town, walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody supports, the families support each other. When someone loses somebody, when there's a baby born, when while the kids are growing up, such as that.
A little community.
Yes, a very community, just like any other community. But it's all, inside the confines of the primary focus of the military.
Wow. Well, good stuff, Uncle Preston. I've definitely learned a lot hearing what you had to share and discuss. And all I can say is I wish I asked you these questions sooner, visiting, Granny's house or something like that. But this is good. And what's neat about this is I've got it all recorded. So this is an experience that will likely be shared over and over. And maybe some of the other relatives, they may want to see it. But Uncle Preston, I can't thank you. I can't thank you enough for being willing to get on this call and answer the questions. I know the students are going to enjoy it a lot when they watch it.
Well, I hope they do. I've enjoyed it. The information Ginger sent you about her dad, maybe that'll shed some more light on your interest. And
oh yes, absolutely.
That's a big story. The different war and everything, but it's been a big part of our life too. And incidentally, the reason I got out of the military was that I had gone my whole life by myself, very much doing what I wanted when I wanted, and always wanted to be a soldier. I got in there, and Nathan, I got lonely. I realized I was lonely.
No.
And I was always by myself, and a thought come to my mind that I need to give this up.
Yeah.
I need to give this up because the loneliness was just too much. So I went back home, Nathan, and I met Ginger.
And you weren't lonely no more.
I wasn't lonely no more. That's the truth.
Oh wow. How soon did you get married after you got out? Like, was it a few months, couple years?
Um, well, I got out in '73. I met Ginger in September of '73, and then we stayed together for 2 years. Got married after
There you
2 years of being together, and what we are now is what we were then.
go. Oh, yay! A happily wedded union.
Yeah, it was very. We're still as happy as we can be
Oh, that's
together.
interesting. That's good. That's good. Wonderful. Well, again, we read through the books. And I'm a big history buff. I study this stuff, teach it, but it's good to get out of the books for a little bit and learn from the perspective of the people who did actually participate in the conflict, who were there. Um, we almost bottleneck our view when we just look from the top, just by reading through words and pages of a book that a historian wrote. Um, but this right here, along with the other interviews that we'll be conducting, I think not only the students are going to enjoy it, but I think they're going to have a better understanding of the war because now they have a face to the war. And no doubt, Uncle Preston, the stuff that you shared, your experiences and whatnot that you've given, I've enjoyed it. If anything, I've enjoyed it, but I know the students are going to enjoy it as well.
Great. I hope they do.
I believe they will. But this was great, Uncle Preston. I really do again appreciate you coming on and doing this interview with me.
Sure. Sure thing, Nathan. I've enjoyed it.
Good, good.
Good to see you.
Likewise, likewise. I'll go ahead and cut the recording here.
Okay.
I want to say we've been on for about an hour and a half or so. So this is going to cover my whole class period. So wonderful. I don't have to plan anything for at least one day.
Good for you. Yeah.
All right. We'll
Good
cut
for
it
you.
here. Well,